quick thoughts on the Edomites, I guess Mount Seir and the Amalekites and the Edomites. It's all kind of confusing and why I'm looking at this. But in 1 Chronicles 4, we see that there is this Mount Seir and the sons of Simeon, which is kind of this elusive tribe, which is probably going to be another video altogether, just trying to look at what happened to Simeon. But anyways, there's one notable thing they did here, where 500 men went to Mount Seir, not really given a good timeline, but they pretty much wiped out the remainder of the Amalekites that had fled there. So there might be some battle that happened. I don't know if this is in the time of Saul, because we have that battle there where the Amalekites are completely and utterly destroyed, and just Agag is left, and then Samuel cuts him to pieces. But somehow in the Esther story we have Amalek returned as Haman. So how did they survive? And that's another video as well. But Amalek is actually the grandson of Esau, so we can assume that they are fleeing to Mount Seir because they're looking for refuge in this mountainous region. Actually, I think I had a picture somewhere here. Yeah, so if we so we don't know exactly where they crossed in the canal. We have the Gulf of Aqaba over here. So if they crossed somewhere, got to Mount Sinai, which is always debated too, where is Mount Sinai, and then they worked their way up. You can see Mount Seir here, kind of a mountain range. There's not a single mountain. We kind of see it stretching up there to the Dead Sea. So we remember that they're coming through here, and then we have Amalek attacking Israel as they're traveling through here in Rephidim, not Raphaim, which is what we went over most recently, is that Raphaim were possibly these giants, or weird term there, but Rephaim just means resting, healing. They're probably similar root words because healing is part of the Rephaim, and but their attack there, and that's the whole Moses is holding up the staff, and every time he puts it down, then Israel starts losing the battle, and eventually Joshua is able to defeat the Amalekites in that battle. And it's actually in the Torah there's commands, 2 or 3 Torah commandments of you are to kill Amalek wherever you find him, and you are to remember what Amalek did on that day where that battle happened, where Israel's all restful and just taking a break, and Amalek just appears and boom, so they're suddenly getting all feisty with him. And we have other references like Esau have hated, and well, once we see there's a connection between Esau and Amalek, it kind of gives us a better picture as to why that is. And of course, it's not this genetic people that he hates, but this spirit of people who attack God's people. So God has to hate Esau and Amalek because it's that spirit of vengefulness against God's people. So since he loves us as his people, Israel, he has to defend us, which means he has to hate those who want to kill us. It's just as simple as that. It's like if you had 2 sons and you love both sons, but the other son is trying to kill that son. I mean, you got to put a stop to it. Yes, we're all created by God. We're all his children, but at the end of the day, one child's trying to be your son, the other one doesn't want anything to do with you, and he's trying to kill your other son. You have to make a choice, and God's been put in a bad situation with that, and he's doing the best he can, and we can't look at him like this creator who is evil, and he's just like, well, I have my chosen people. And again, that's another video, but let's continue on here. So I don't really know the time period of when the Simeonites, which would have been dwelling, so Judea would have been here. And we can kind of jump all around history here. And Simeon would have been somewhere in here, a nomadic tribe, and they just kind of fizzle out and kind of disappear, or maybe they kind of join with Edom, who knows. Eventually Edom gets to kind of the Nabateans, or which would have been the Arabians, coming in, pushing them more into Idumea at the time of Christ. So you had Idumea and then Judea, and they're all kind of fighting together to hold Jerusalem. Jerusalem's actually probably more up here, sorry. So Jerusalem, right there. It's not too far from the Dead Sea. You might be able to get there with a day's walk or so. And Herod also being a Idumean, so he would have been Edomite, and it's probably a mix of people. So, and here we go. We have another picture of the the Nabatean tribes, the kingdom of Edom, obviously kind of cut down to size. Yeah, there's Jerusalem. Cut down to size by what happened there. And so Amalek has a connection there to Edom. And Edom kind of joins with Judea. Obviously, Herod was a Torah keeper. And you kind of have to wonder, because there's still a child of Abraham, right? It shows this kind of grafting idea that you can be joined. It's not just a bloodline thing. You can, if you keep Torah, you are a son of Israel. Not every Jew would agree with that, even at the time of Jesus. But that's just the complexity of what's going on there with Edom and Amalek and Mount Seir. And Mount Seir is always like this idea of, and I had some reasons why Edom is hated. I found a good little list here from this guy. And a lot of it's in Obadiah. A lot of people think Obadiah is himself an Edomite. And if you're of Edom, genealogically, bloodline, you join Israel, you're no longer of Edom. It's kind of like Caleb. He was a Kezanite or something. But it's just kind of like where he's from. He's still of Israel, right? He has his own tribe, just where he came from. It's all about definitions, right? Context. Edom's violence against Jacob's brother. Edom was an enemy of Judah at the time of their destruction. A lot of this is referencing, I'll keep reading here. Edom gave assent to the judgment on Judah. Edom rejoiced at Judah's downfall. This is obviously talking a lot about it. 586, the destruction of Jerusalem. Edom spoke proudly in the day of the distress of Judah. Edom followed Jerusalem as an enemy to take spoil. And one of the things is that Edom really kind of pushed the Babylonians to destroy the temple. And that reminds me of 70 AD when the Arabs, or the Nabateans, were kind of conscripts for Roman under Titus, because they wouldn't be all been like from Italy, they would have been, locals who would have been conscripted to fight in this force against Jerusalem. So they obviously didn't like the Israelites, and a lot of that actually had to do with Herod. Herod carved out probably the largest kingdom, even larger than David's, which is one thing about Herod the Great. He wasn't just a great builder, but actually claimed a lot of land. After his death, that's when we get the tetrarchy, where it was split between his sons and I think a Roman official, and that's why Herod the Tetrarch is over living past the Jordan to the east of the Jordan. So we had the different leaders all throughout there. It's funny that he reigned there, but he also was in control of the Galilee, where Jesus was from. What was I saying? So Edom, after they were part of the destruction of the temple, destroying the temple, but also kind of hunting down anyone that was fleeing from Jerusalem. The city's taken, people are just fleeing, and Edom's just waiting in the rocks and the hills, and that would be probably one direction you would go is towards Mount Seir. Probably go in any direction, but thinking maybe Edom would be nice to you. I don't know. Like, hey, remember Abraham? We're all connected. And it didn't work out, but they hunted them down and were just, really like murdering everyone. It was bad. So Edom looked on the affliction of Judah in the day of calamity. Edom laid hands on the substance of Judah when they were defeated. And so Edom actually goes in and controls part of the land southern to Jerusalem, which is, Edomia later on. I don't know what happened during the Hasmonean dynasty, and I don't know what Edom would have done at that point, or during Antiochus IV's campaign. They probably just kind of got mixed in, right? Because obviously there'd be a lot of hatred towards Edom, and that's why Jerusalem's siege in 70 AD didn't work out so well, because there was so much infighting. It wasn't just bloodline. There was religious camps and different zealots and a lot of Zionism going on. Like, we must preserve the temple at all costs. It doesn't matter if we're breaking Torah. It's more love. Love is the heart of the Torah and the heart of the temple system as a whole, and they miss that. So it's not about the temple, and it's not about the city. And that's the whole point of Zechariah, them reading through his end. It's going to get destroyed, and the whole land's going to be destroyed, and make way for God's new Jerusalem. He's got to cleanse this whole land of all this blood and all this destruction, all the sin that's upon it. He must clear it out before this holy city sets down. Actually, cleanse it anyways. If it's coming down, it's just going to cleanse it, because it's holy cannot exist with the unholy. It's just how it works. So we see a little bit there with Edom and Mount Seir, and probably more questions than answers. Like always, thank you for joining me. I know that was a nice rant. What am I looking at here? If you're wondering, Mount Seir, the most important of the Bible. Gantz Hill, I don't know anything about this guy, but just something I found. Short little read. Longer read, which I have skimmed myself. So we see the destruction of Edom in 550. So if you're wondering when they got kind of pushed out of their kingdom, that was shortly after the 586. So yeah, you can see this is quite a long and arduous look at the Edomites. So I'm sure you'll find this if you just search, as I have. Nice little timeline. Do your own homework. But that was the rabbit trail I went on. Am I satisfied? Never. No. The more I read, the more questions I have. But good enough for now. I will continue my journey through Chronicles. And it looks like we'll have some other references as well in Chronicles that we'll look forward to. Especially mentioned here. We saw 2 Chronicles 20, and again in 2 Chronicles 20, some more Mount Seir references. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everybody.